Geoffrey Clarke meant the world to me. Those who knew him, how generous and caring he was. Everyone in this room tonight would have a story of his generosity, I am sure. Traditionally, memorial speech is about honouring the dead, but I cannot truly honour Geoffrey without partially telling my story and Trevor's role in it. To pinch a quote of a dear friend of Trevor and Geoffrey's, they gave a new meaning to the word duo. Several years before I met Geoffrey, I must have seemed to my parents a difficult child. It's not the time or place to discuss those days, but I was going through things any young adult would have difficult discussing with their parents, and my behaviour would have seemed inexplicable. After 3 years of torturing my parents, I left them little choice and they left me my belongings on the porch, and I apologised, Mum and Dad. After 2 days, the friends I was hanging around with abandoned me in Sunshine. I was alone and too ashamed to go home. Cold, alone and desperate for 2 days, I was screwed. I had no money, no idea what to do, break the law or even suicide. Third night on the streets, I sat for hours and hours. I had no idea of time. It was light and it was dark. I didn't have a watch. I had no idea of the time. As it got dark, I wondered what would become of me. I was scared. Then this lovely man with beautiful blue eyes approached. He had an aura around him. I asked him for a cigarette. He had one last cigarette. I said to him I can't take his last cigarette. He said he would return. Before he walked away, I asked him suggestions where I could sleep without bothering anyone. He said he'd think about it. He returned, and after a few moments of umming and ahhing, he offered me a couch on his porch. On the way to his house, I was in a desperate state. He basically had to carry me to his place. On arrival, he walked past the couch and instead took me to a bed, fed me what he had in the house, bananas and chinado, smiled, tucked me in and walked out, telling me he'd be back tomorrow. The following night he returned with more food, and again without making any advances to me, asked me a little about myself. I told him a little about my past, some of which even at this point in my life is too painful to mention, and I had not up to then mentioned to anybody. After this he apologised and left again. I had no idea why. On the third night he returned. Something seemed to be troubling him. After a long discussion he informed me this current arrangement couldn't continue, because there are others that needed his attention. It was this point he told me about Trevor and his sick mother in Monastery. Trevor, his partner living in Monastery in Sunshine at the time, was caring for his sick mother, with help from among others Geoffrey and Geoffrey's mother, but predominantly Geoffrey. He told me that he cared for me, but in order to help me, we had to get Trevor involved. He also informed me that Trevor was well aware of the circumstance. I was scared, but understood and told him tomorrow I would meet Trevor, and we could go from there. The following night I walked with Geoffrey to Trevor's house. On arrival, Geoffrey told me to go and sit with Trevor and not be scared. I sat and talked with Trevor and my fears were quickly dissipated. Over the next few weeks, Geoffrey and Trevor started helping me get my life back on track. They helped me understand my parents' position and ultimately encouraged me to reconcile with them. Over the next few months, Geoffrey and Trevor made sure my belly was full and I had clothes on my back, and ultimately made me face reality that I was getting nowhere fast. Geoffrey and Trevor, through many discussions, laid out my options, but forced me to make my own decisions, which they ultimately would support 100%. One of these decisions was me returning to school to complete my VCE. Geoffrey and Trevor helped me organise funds, school books, and even contacted an old friend to organise me a laptop. So that's what I did, returned to school, but I didn't do it alone. Trevor helped me with the humanities side of things, and Geoffrey, best maths tutor you could ever find. I met many people at Kangan. The one man who sits in this room, my dear friend Christopher Barrow, who's just spoken. Initially, Chris thought my situation was weird. But after a short while, Geoffrey and Chris became the best of mates. Through many hours of sorting and support, I completed my VCE. And even though I didn't get the highest of marks, I still achieved something very important in my life, thanks largely to Geoffrey and Trevor. After finishing my VCE, it took me a while to find my feet. Geoffrey was always there when I found myself lost. Eventually I landed a position at Mapping Security, which I kept for 8 years. I was in my early 20s and working was hard. Geoffrey was always in the ear when I needed to vent and a shoulder to cry on when times were tough. Several years after I started at the company was sold to a big American firm. Geoffrey hated corporate culture, which he saw the possibility of me becoming a victim of. In all the years I knew Geoffrey, this was the only time that I didn't listen to him and leave the company at this stage. However, Geoffrey accepted my decision and helped me make the transition. I learned very quickly that he was indeed right and I should have left. Working under this company was torture. Again, Geoffrey was my ear when I needed to vent and my shoulder when I had to cry. Working at this time was very hard. The bullying and torture eventually led me to have a nervous breakdown. Again, Geoffrey was there to pick up the pieces. And even when I inevitably lost my job, he supported me and helped me negotiate a worthy settlement after a paltry initial offer. After losing my position, my life started to spiral downwards. I couldn't find a job. Money was few and far between. Geoffrey and Trev would not let me give up. So I fought hard and after 2 years of struggle, landed the job where I find myself today. Thank you, Milsey. Geoffrey did so much more for me though, all the years that I knew him. He could encourage me to socialise, which included playing cricket, the game I loved, as well as lending his support to the club that adopted me. In the initial years of meeting Geoffrey, I was in a very fragile state, which he could quite easily have taken advantage of. My life had no direction, but after 15 years of his support, and particularly his patience and stubbornness, or as our good friend Vivian would say, resolution, I'm the man that stands before you today. A man that as little as 3 years ago could not have dealt with losing someone so special. I stand before you stronger, proud and honoured to have known the man that was my friend, confidant, mentor and long-time companion, Geoffrey Clarke.